Welcome to the Donna Sebo Show Special Editions. This program is dedicated to featuring authors and experts from around the world who will share their knowledge and insight with you, the viewing and listening audience. Literacy and education are the keys to freedom, and diversity enables one to live in a world with broader perspectives. This is Donna Sebo, and I will be your host for the next hour. This video provides general information and discussions about health and related subjects. The information and other content provided in this video or in any linked materials are not intended and should not be construed as medical advice, nor is the information a substitute for professional medical expertise or treatment. Hello and welcome. I'm Donna Sebo. I'm delighted to have you join me with this program on brain trauma, a medical challenge. I have to say this is a very meaningful program to me, and the reason it is, and I have two very special gentlemen with me that we are going to be discussing various aspects regarding this particular medical condition. But I have a number of friends that have gone through brain trauma. I have clients that have experienced brain trauma, and I've known families whose children have been affected by the traumas of sports injuries. So the reason I wanted to do this show, and it's so important for me to share this with you, is that we need to be educated. We need to understand how important it is that we know we can do something about this. And it is something that can be healed, if you will. But sadly, there's a lot we don't know as individuals, as civilians, that the medical community does. So I want to introduce to you two gentlemen. I have Bruce Parkman. Now, he was on my radio show, and Bruce, it's wonderful having you on the program. And your book is absolutely amazing. It's Youth, Contact Sports, and Broken Brains. That's the title of his book. And then we have a Dr. San Shavar, and Dr. Dan, he is known affectionately by the patients that he works with and the staff. I want to welcome you as well, because this is something that in getting the information that you two gentlemen are going to be able to share, it brings forth to so many what they might otherwise not know anything about. So if you have a member of your family that has gone through a brain trauma, if you have children that are in contact sports, I think you're going to find our conversation a very interesting one. Bruce, I wanted to start with you because I first became acquainted with you when I did an interview on your book about sports and how this affected your family and your son. And I would love for you to share your story about this because it is so significant.
Donna, I'll give a quick overview. So anyways, my name is Bruce Parkman. My son ended up taking his life at the age of 17 after suffering from undiagnosed mental illness, which we found out afterwards was the result of him playing a lot of contact sports throughout his life. Sports that I didn't play, but I'm a semi-pro rugby player, but sports that we found out have significant impacts on the brain through the continuous and relentless number of hits that brain suffers from when they are, when he's tackling, when he's on the wrestling mat, when he's skiing or snowboarding. And these hits over time, we now know through research and science, do change the brain. And the outcome of that is mental illness. And so my son, unfortunately, is no longer here, but he's left me this legacy to work with folks like you to spread awareness of this, to spread information and awareness of this condition so that parents and coaches and athletes can make better can make better decisions, because sports can be safer, and we are proving that every day.
Dr. Dan, I wanted to talk with you for just a moment. I know that your time is going to be limited with us because you have a commitment with your patients, but you have been involved with sports medicine, the research regarding neuroplasticity, brain trauma, youth sports, and brain trauma. And Dr. Dan, when I am thinking about the papers that I read that you wrote. When I'm looking at those papers, there's so much here that's been discovered. I would like to know how it is that you became involved with being engaged with the study on brain trauma.
Thank you for having me here. It's wonderful to be here. And thank you, Bruce, for sharing that story of your son. And your incredibly impactful work. I first got involved in this space because after graduating from MIT, I started working in the neurodegenerative disease space, specifically looking at Alzheimer's. And a 6'5" former professional wrestler walked into my boss's office back in 2008 and started talking about how repeated traumatic brain injuries have this lingering effect. And that shifted the focus of my research. So I started then further exploring all of the ways that repeated traumatic brain injuries might cause problems in thinking, problems with memory, problems with behavior, problems with mood. And that was 18 years ago, and I haven't looked back since.
When I was looking at the papers that you have produced, I found that you were very, very clear in how the various parts of the brain work. Now, anybody that is a sports fan, they know that, in fact, that's one thing that the audience just loves is seeing 300-pounders, go after someone. These are incredible athletes, and they have all of this impact. I mean, you've got all of this, I'll call it tonnage, of human bodies that are just piling on each other or hitting each other with such a force. I mean, I can watch people in the audience and they'll wince and they'll cringe and they'll just go, "Oh, that had to hurt." And it does. It does. And they've got all of this protective gear. And part of the research that you have gone through has been research on what's the impact? What's the value of helmets? What's the value of the padding? What is the value of all of this that is just intense physical impact? And you've got the brain stem as well. Not just the brain, but the brain stem, the whole nervous system. What has your research come up with relative to this?
Well, one of the things that we've realized is that so much of the conversation pertaining to these brain injuries has focused on concussion. And concussions are hits to the head that result in symptoms. But when we look at the helmet sensor data of the actual impacts, for example, for a given offensive lineman playing football in college, that person who gets a concussion, we've gone back and looked at the helmet sensor data for the average, and that person on average experienced 341 hits to the head that were of equal or greater force than the head impact that resulted in the concussion. And so what we're realizing is all of those impacts matter. The accumulation of all of the impacts add up over time to the tune of hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of those. And that's what makes a bigger difference. And so when we talk about equipment, the helmets, the headgear, that does an incredible job at stopping catastrophic brain injuries that are so severe that the skull fractures and part of the skull goes into the brain, or a bleed occurs. But when we're talking about the accumulation of all of those tens of thousands of non-concussive head impacts that are causing a subclinical traumatic brain injury, those are not really affected that much by the helmet.
You also bring out so much information that people need to be aware of. Now, let's talk about children for a minute. We have kids today that are starting in sports at the age of 5. I mean, I look at Little League Baseball, and that is something I've done interviews on, and these kids are out there and they're just really enjoying themselves. Now, we're not against sports. That's something that I want my audience to understand. We are not against sports at all, but it's understanding that when you're younger, those injuries can actually have results later on, like when they're in high school. Now, let's address that a little bit, because we don't want to be so overprotective with our kids that they go, what's the matter with you? I just want to go out and play ball. Well, anybody can get injured at any time, even just playing ball in your front yard. But this is different. How is it that we can start educating people so that we can start educating people? And that includes the coaches, because look at how long it's taken us just to start to acknowledge the NFL, the NHL. You have these huge, huge organizations worth literally millions, if not billions of dollars. This is a business to them. And then you've got the kids. So what options do we have?
Well, I think the first and most important thing that we need to emphasize is that sports have well-established and beneficial effects. Athletic activity is critically important for neuronal development and for physical development. So you're absolutely right that we're not talking about eliminating sport. We would never want to do that. We're talking about making sports safer and talking about ways that we can eliminate the unnecessary risks associated with these sports while allowing our kids to benefit from the camaraderie, the team building, the leadership, all of the other tangible and intangible benefits of these sports. And along those lines, when we're talking about what we can do to help treat and improve the care for our kids, I unfortunately have to jump off to treat one of these patients now. So it's been a real pleasure being here. Thank you very much for the questions, and I appreciate your time.
I'm so glad you were able to join us for this short period. It's meant a lot. Thank you. Well, Bruce, we're going to be coming back to you because Doctor has to leave, and there's so much more that he could share, but we're going to be talking because when I did the interview with your son, having read your book, and that was so intense for me when I read about what happened to him, because this was not something that you, your family, nobody had a clue that your son was suffering. And the story that you share in your book, Youth Contact Sports, Broken Brains, this is something that I think when we hear these stories, when we listen to them, it just breaks your heart, because you go, why would someone do this? But you found, Bruce, a journal, didn't you, after he died?
Well, we didn't find a journal. We found 4 suicide notes that our son had written stating that he wanted to die. And they were hidden in a pile of baseball gaps. We were very respectful of his room because we had no reason to really bother. I mean, he was a 17-year-old young man. He was getting good grades. He was well loved in school. There were no red flags. And, never, even if I would have gone and tossed his room, I probably wouldn't have found these. It was after he passed when we really started tearing stuff apart, because we had no idea why he wasn't here, that we found them. But yeah, we did find indications that he was going to leave, and he was talking about, the post life, about what death would be like, and some of his schoolwork. And we found out later that when kids are talking about the afterlife, that is an indicator of suicidal ideation, and the teachers didn't catch that. And we, of course, didn't see anything other than, the lack of energy or apathy about things that we didn't know was an indicator of mental illness. We just thought, he's getting ready to join the Army, likes his room dark, he's getting his work done. He's just a wonderful boy. He's making us laugh. I'm spending every night next to him during COVID, and I'm not seeing anything. He's laughing with his gaming friends. He's just hiding it and internalizing it. But yeah, he no journal, but there were suicide notes.
Now, you started on a journey because of your son's death. And again, that's what your book is about. You have started on a journey, and this journey has been one that has led you into so many aspects of knowledge that you want people to know about.
And that's the reason that we're doing this program. When your son, after he died, and how was it that you decided to have the autopsy and the autopsy of the brain done?
Well, I mean, this is where God has really impacted our lives. And I do believe my son beyond the grave is highlighting where we need to go. When he passed, we had absolutely no idea why he took his life. I mean, I was the last person to see him. He was going to football practice. He was all handsome in his football uniform. And I went up there and hugged him and kissed him on the cheek. Because when he left me, I don't care if he was 2 or 17, he was getting a kiss from Dad. And I said, make good decisions. He goes, I will, Dad. And he never came back. And so, unfortunately, during COVID, there was a long time between, the coroner getting to the autopsy and, and we had no idea what had happened. And just by the grace of God, one of my wife's friends was one of the leading forensic pathologists in this country. And we talked to him, and there was a lot of crime surrounding my son's death. He was medicating with marijuana that we did not know that they have these vape pen things that they can't smell it, they don't know it, and he was getting it from the football team. So these football players and their fathers decided to cover their rears. They broke into his car. They actually tried to break into my house while we were all out looking for my son because he was missing for about almost 24 hours. We didn't find him. Till the next day. And then they tried to break into his wall locker at school. They were all going nuts. They were getting the police chiefs to call us and tell us not to press charges. I mean, it was not, and dealing with your son's death is one part. Dealing with your family and trying to keep them together is another. And then having to deal with this investigation was just crippling. But I had to do my best. So, we had a call with this forensic pathologist, and my daughter is a lawyer. And so I had her in the car with one of his friends, and he got on the phone with me, and he goes, and we told him everything that happened. Look, our son took his life. We don't know what's going on. I had friends, because I'm in the date industry, pulling cell phone records to try and find out who was up there with him. I mean, all he did was leave us one video saying that I am done and I have been schizophrenic and I cannot do this anymore. Okay. And so at the end of the story, he goes, what have you done with the body? I go, well, it's at the morgue and we're going to cremate it. And he was very emphatic. He goes, why? I go, well, we have the service on Saturday, sir. He goes, from what you've told me, there could be coercion, there could be crime. If you cremate that body, how are you going to take another look at it if there is evidence that comes out after you buried him? So we decided not to cremate the body. We had the service, closed casket, and then we left our son at the morgue. So 3 months later, my wife has to go into recovery. I end up picking up my son's best friend who was almost dead from drugs himself and helping him get back in life. And, I'm running a company and I'm doing all kinds of stuff, but it's time for the autopsy. And I get on the phone with the coroner. And the coroner says, Mr. Parkman, I'm sorry, this was a suicide. And he said, there's no evidence. I mean, your son was, when he took his life, he was not under the influence of any marijuana, any alcohol. He was, because they can tell. He said he was sober. I said, all right, I want you to tell me why my son is not here. A young boy that was loved, who believed in our Lord, who, took vacations. He's been with me all around the world, the pyramids, Tahiti, Australia. I mean, I spent a lot of time. He was my soulmate. I said, why is this boy not here? He never knew of physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, none of the abuse I suffered as a child. Why is he not here? And so his next question is the only reason, Donna, that I am still here on this earth. And he asked me, did my son play contact sports? And I said, dang right he did. He's American. He played football, rugby, hockey. And I start running down the list. And he goes, he said, I tried to do a CTE exam. CTE stands for chronic traumatic encephalopathy. A lot of us know that as the NFL disease. It impacts a lot more than NFL players. And I said, what's that? He explained it to me. And long story short, I went and looked up CT. As soon as I was off the phone with him, I found Karen Zengel from the Stop CT organization, who told me your son's brain never rests. And I know you have more questions, but I want to say that once I found out what CT was, that led me down a whole path, because now I had a mission. If my son was affected by this disease, which he ended up not, and that's a whole nother part of the story that we'll talk about, and why this is such an important story for parents to see, okay, then I need to know why. And then that's what we got a hold of Boston University, where Dr. Dan works, and through the grace of God again, they were like, "We're so sorry because," and I said, "Why?" They said, "Because you filled out the application. Your son would have been an unbelievable." A tragic but unbelievable addition to our brain bank, because we don't get a lot of 17-year-olds, but it's been 3 months. He's been, he's probably been interred. And I go, no, I still got the body. And they were like, what? I go, yes. They said, give us the coroner, give us a funeral home right now. And they called me back the next day, go, this has never happened. You are going to be able to make a donation. And that's the part that started our journey down this path to understanding why potentially millions of our children right now are suffering in silence, simply because they've played too much contact sports with their brains not ready for it.
You have done so much research on this. You have established a foundation, and that is the Mac Parkman Foundation, and you have accomplished so much with this. Your family is involved with it. You have got doctors that are very much supportive of it. And when I read about a little boy, his name is Zach, 8 years old, he committed suicide. And that just, I said, an 8-year-old? Why in the world would he do it? Now, this was a kid that loved football. He loved football. And you'll see the children out on the school grounds, and they've got their equipment on, they've got their helmets on, and you think, gee, they're going to be safe, they're going to be fine. And he used his little head, he's only 8, he used his little head like a battering ram. That just was astonishing to me, because my first thought is, when he's doing that, when he's butting his head and he's going full force, even at 8 years of age, that affects the brain stem as well. How did you find out about Zach?
We unfortunately belong to a group of parents that is hosted by the Concussion Legacy Foundation. And these are parents, wives, and loved ones, caretakers of men and women that have contributed their brains to the CTE brain bank. Unfortunately, a growing number of families, it all started with retired NFL players. And as that became recognized as a cause of death or a condition, and we'll talk about CTE. CTE is not the cause of death. It's a condition that's identified post-mortem after you die. But it leads to the continuous impacts lead to chronic neurological or neurodegenerative diseases like ALS, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia. And as we started seeing these NFL players get affected by these conditions early in their 40s and 50s, then the NFL players started to understand that, wow, this could be me. So the family started donating their brain. In recent years, however, I would say that a significantly growing part of our population are parents now understanding that the impact of repetitive ed impacts, which does cause CTE, which will cause that condition that you'll be diagnosed with, is now leading to is now a significant contributor to the mental illness pandemic that is affecting their children. So that's where we started. That's how we started finding out, moms and dads. And then the big thing, Don, is much like you mentioned, we have the only summit on this issue in the world, the repetitive brain trauma summit. We host it in Tampa every year. We have a podcast called Broken Brains, which is the fastest growing brain podcast on the internet. We're acting. And Donna, for many years, people just looked at CTE. Dr. Dan has done a lot of studies. Dr. Dan is all about RHI, repetitive ed impacts. For years, he mentioned about how concussions was the focus. We focused so much on concussions that we overlooked the basic problem, which was this lifestyle of banging our heads is connected to the damage that's done to the brain and then to the mental illness. So that's how we're starting to identify, or people are starting to figure out that my kid who just committed suicide, he might have this CTE thing. And so the families are now, finding us. And, just a quick story that is kind of horrific for your viewers. I am now dealing with the family of a 22-year-old. At 14, he started struggling from mental illness, and this child started playing lacrosse at 4 years old.
Oh my.
10 years, 4 years old. So by 14, he was on the juniors national team for this country. That
Amazing.
child has been medicated, locked up, and basically under therapy for 7 years, and not once did anybody, any of his caretakers, any of his medical, psychological, nursing population out there, did they ever ask about contact sports? They could have been healing his brain 7 years ago. That child almost took his life in December of this year, heroically, like he wanted out, because the mental illness is associated with these conditions like deep depression, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, are impacting our children. Like my son, we're the only option to reduce the pain, because to them it seems hopeless, I need to leave. And they don't want to tell the people they love that they're suffering. It is a horrible situation. And once you understand it, you cannot unsee this.
Well, also too, something that comes into my mind, because as I said at the beginning of the program, I've known more than one individual that has suffered brain trauma, automobile accidents, maybe they've been assaulted, they've been attacked. There's all kinds of conditions. One woman I know, she was in an automobile accident, hit by a drunk driver. She was tossed around in the car like a ping pong ball. And when they got her to the hospital, her brain had literally been squashed up against the side of her skull. And what she went through, fortunately, she had members of family that were compassionate, but there was no way. She said, I can tell you, Donna, that even the last time I spoke with her, she said, even today, I have to recognize certain things. I have to pay attention, because I will start screaming. I will start screaming because my whole body system, my nervous system, nothing's working like it's supposed to work. And when you hear that from someone, there's no way you can even imagine it. So when you're talking about young people, I'm talking about a woman that is older and is, logically thinking about things to the best of her capacity. But for heaven's sakes, when you have a child, all they're going to tell you is, my head hurts. I don't know, I don't feel good. Leave me alone. And then when they have behavior that you can't in a rational mind even begin to understand it. How do you even cope with that? And if you go to a doctor, or you can even go to a therapist, I've had people tell me, my goodness, they're just having a bad day. This is just the way teenagers are, or whatever. That is so wrong. So how can an examination be made of the brain? We have all of this technology available to us. What are we supposed to do? I mean, what are parents to do? Look at police officers, firefighters, wrestlers,
Yes,
Muhammad Ali. Look at the Parkinson's that he had. That man was beaten so many times, and he loved boxing. He was hit. I mean, he was a champion. This is what you admire. He
Yes,
paid a
ma'am.
huge price.
It is the price. The price is enormous, and the price is actually going up because those people that you just mentioned, the nurses, the doctors, the psychologists, our suicide prevention specialists, are all completely ignorant of the relationship between contact sports, which is played by millions of children, the damage done to the brain, and the first indication that we have that they're suffering is mental illness. Now we know they're mentally ill. I mean, you could see it. I mean, obviously that's why they're in front of the psychologist. The problem is that the first course of action is medication and therapy. Yet they continue to play these sports. When my son died, I had, of course, go see a psychologist, right? I mean, I'm in a lot of pain. And when I got done explaining to her what I was learning, she was horrified. She started to cry. And I said, "What's the problem?" She goes, "Bruce, I am sending every one of my sports players back out to play
Oh, for
because
heaven's
it's
sakes.
good for them. It's their identity. It's what I thought they needed. And yet it was those sports that are causing them to come see me." She said, "My entire profession is untrained on the linkage between contact sports and mental illness. And we are misdiagnosing and mistreating 100% of these children."
This is something I think any parent, if they reflect on past histories, I mean, some kids just love the Westerns like with John Wayne, but you have these old movies where the football players, they just had the leather cap, over their head.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
they were out there, they didn't have helmets, they didn't have the padded stuff. Nothing was known at that time, but I think the game was a bit different than today.
It was a little bit different, but did you know in 1928 and in the 50s, there were significant discussions over what they called the barbaric nature of football and whether it should be played in the 1920s. There's a book called, I think, No Game for Boys. And there was a lot of discussion at the very elite intellectual levels of whether this game should be played by boys at all and should be an adults
Really?
only sport. In the
Amazing.
1950s, there was a lot of discussion about should this sport and be in colleges, which are there for us to educate, to allow the brain to explore and develop and to encourage intellectual curiosity into the sciences, into the arts. And what is this sport doing in this barbaric sport? And it's not football, Don. It's contact sports in general. And there's nothing wrong. I'm a semi-pro rugby player. I love beating another guy, but I didn't start till I was 29. Okay, there are smarter ways. Contact sports is not going anywhere. Football is a religion in this country. It's not going anywhere, but we can make it safer. That lack of ignorance that we talked about is what's causing all the damage, and we need to address that.
Let's talk about the brain for a minute because this is the focus. Mental illness. We have an astonishing amount of mental illness. We have people that are in prison. And I believe, Bruce, you mentioned to me on the phone when we were going to set up the television interview, you mentioned to me that you were working with 2 former professional players that were in prison for their violent behavior. Am I remembering our conversation correctly?
No, we're working with individuals right now that are for that right there. There was a study done by the Brain Injury Association of America that found that 84% of our incarcerated population here has a history of 4.2 TBIs or traumatic brain injuries, and many of them have played contact sports. I mean, our police activity leagues here have tackle football. We converted the only police activity league to flag football in the nation so far. And yet that same league still teaches boxing to 8-year-olds. We are, our intent is to get kids off the street. I got it to get them to be tough and resilient, but taking hits to the head is the wrong way to go. We are absolutely causing mental illness and incarceration and criminal behavior. And if you look at the impact that mental illness has on our population, especially remember, this is a preventable cause of mental illness. It impacts crime, unemployment, mental illness, suicidal ideation, domestic abuse, literally every social ill that we have, substance abuse can be related to mental illness. And a lot of this mental illness is being caused by kids that are taking too many hits to the head.
One thing I think that's very important to mention too, Bruce, is the research that has come out that you mention in your book about the progressiveness, just like with Zach at 8 years of age committing suicide. And you have a number of different cases that you bring out, but one of them one of the people, and we find that it's mostly men that we're talking about, but yet there was a woman who you mention in your book who was a champion. I mean, she is a champion, and she committed suicide after a brain injury from what she experienced in the competition she was participating in. And
I'm sorry.
This is really something. This is something that may not show any symptoms right away. So what do? We have a kid that's out, soccer, basketball, football, rugby, as you said, any of this. What does a parent do? What do we need to do? Is there anything in the way of a CT scan? Can we examine the brain? What do we do, Bruce? Because this is not something to be taken lightly.
Not at all. And you mentioned basketball. Basketball is actually a very safe sport. At the Boston University CTE Bank, there are no basketball players, there are no baseball players, swimmers, track athletes, winter sports athletes, so on and so forth. There's a lot of sports that do not involve the head. But what we do, soccer players, rugby players, lacrosse players, hockey players, football players, wrestlers. So you see where the line is drawn for parents. What do parents do? First of all, don't let your kid play contact sports. The science right now shows that the most important part of your child's brain, the prefrontal cortex, does not start developing until 14, until high school. That critical part of the brain, they call this the CEO of the brain, is unmyelinated. It's undeveloped. So if you have hit this absorbs 80% of the impact in sports like football and soccer, where people head balls and tackle. Okay, when you have a damaged prefrontal cortex, you have a damaged adult, no doubt about it. And with kids playing at 5 and 6, by the time they're 14, and then they keep playing in high school, you got a lot of damage. So for parents, pick a sport or pick a non-contact form of that sport: flag football, no head soccer, no check hockey, touch rugby until high school. And if you're going to roll the dice, find a coach that does not allow contact in practice. Practice and contact is completely unnecessary brain trauma. You got to win the game. You got to leave it on the field. Anybody can play game day in football 12, 16 times a year. You'll probably end up with CTE level 1, but you can make all your money and enjoy it. You can get your college scholarship, the whole 9 yards. But when you contact every day in practice, like 90+% of our high schools do, the NFL doesn't, then we have unnecessary brain damage. Same thing with heading soccer balls. And girls rugby is the fastest growing sport in this country. And people think that girls need to tackle in order to be tough. They don't. You're only hurting their brain. If they've already played and you're concerned, and say there's something here that's very important for parents to understand. There's a medical protocol called the Traumatic Encephalopathy Syndrome Protocol, TES. That is the in vivo or live diagnosis of chronic traumatic encephalopathy in people. These protocols were approved in 2019 by the National Institute for Neurological Disorders and Strokes, but they weren't validated for dissemination to a medical population. 4 simple questions a parent can ask their child Have they played contact sports? Do they have a mental illness? Is it progressing? And if there's no familial or genetic predisposition to mental illness, these three yeses, the first three questions, indicate that your child should probably see a neurologist to be validated for this issue. So that comes to the next part of your question is, how do we tell if a child's been damaged? Well, we already have the exposure. You as a parent know that your child has played football, any of those contact sports for a long time. Equestrian activities are the third largest producer of concussions in this country. Wheeled sports like skateboards, skates, the roller blades, all these produce enormous amounts of impacts to the head as well. If your child has had a lot of exposure, then there are 4 different scans that a parent can get. It's called a functional MRI, a QEEG, and I'm not even going to try and pronounce that one. You have a DTI scan, diffusal tensor imaging scan, and you have what's called a SPECT scan. Those 4 scans can show that there are abnormalities. They measure different things. They measure the flow of electrical pulses, the flow of water molecules. They all do different things, but in the end, they can say this brain has been changed. Between the exposure and that scan, you then now need to start doing 2 things. Stop playing the darn sport and start treating the brain. And we can go into that next if you have some more questions. But there are a lot of treatments now known to produce growth in the brain, to heal the brain. Most of them are not covered by insurance at this time, and none of them involve pharmaceutical intervention and therapy. I mean, there's no doubt that those are needed when you have acute suicidal ideation, but they do nothing to cause or to heal the problem, which is a damaged brain.
Boy, that is just wonderful to hear. And I myself am aware of, because of the interviews that I've done with different people, the fact that the brain can be healed. And it's amazing. And in children, the healing process can be a lot quicker than what perhaps we would even imagine. But that means you have to say no. You have to be present, and you have to explain to the child, although the child may not be happy about it, but just say, look, we've got some other options that you can consider for sports. Let's look at this because we want you to be as smart as you possibly can be so that you can be that person that you really are. Because the cases that you have in your book, Bruce, the information that you share, it's so obvious, the behavior of these individuals. This is not really them. They are actually trying to fight for their own survival. And when you get someone that's in their 20s and they're going through these suicidal moments or hallucinations or these moods that just flash, change, it's just like a flash of light. It's there. And you go, where did that come from? I don't get it. I don't understand it. That doesn't make sense. Questions have to be asked, and it really is significant. I'm going to quote some statistics regarding, and again, we're using football because that is such a key part of this.
Part of it, yeah.
477 football players, 186,000 impacts during 27 games and practices. That is substantial. That isn't something that doesn't make you pause. You go, is that really possible? Are you making this up? But this isn't made up, is it?
That's a research study. I can't remember who did that, but that study was actually performed to find out which positions in football are the worst. And I'm the guy that sent my son to play on the line because I thought nobody wants to be a lineman. I wanted him to play, right? Not just sit on the bench. Well, from that study right now, the people that play on the line are absolutely the worst, the worst affected by this condition. Why? Because on every football play, they hit. They come off that line and hit every play. Where a running back, if he doesn't get the ball, he might have to do some blocking. They're right up there. But like you think of the quarterbacks and the wide receivers and the tight ends, if they don't get the ball, they don't get hit. Same thing in the backfield. If they don't make a tackle, their head doesn't move. But those linemen, The linebackers and the running backs are the folks that get the majority of the hits, but those numbers are absolutely correct.
It's just surprising. The young woman, Kelly Catlin, she was a female cyclist, and it's because of a concussion that she got. She obviously fell off of her bike. She got a concussion. She was 23 years old. She committed suicide in 1919, or 2019.
A lot of people don't understand that while concussions aren't the root cause of a lot of the mental illness we have, they don't help. And if you get a bunch of them and they're close enough, remember, it's what the big risk here is what they call neuroinflammation. When your brain is concussed, it gets inflamed. Now, those repetitive impacts do not allow it to rest, so that neuroinflammation stays. And the brain's response to that neuroinflammation, the fire trucks that come plowing in to pull out all the trash that's accumulated and try to get the brain to heal, well, they keep showing up because you keep impacting the brain. And then sooner or later, they start taking away live material. They start eating at the brain. Neuroinflammation becomes toxic. Between those concussions, there is absolutely, if she kept jostling her brain, say she rode horses, say she was a snowboarder, right? These are the little things that take those concussions and make them so deadly or so impactful, where they're so negative for brain health. And then the outcome of that is suicide. People are going to heal from one concussion. A concussion is part of life. That's part of risk. And we'll talk about risk here in a little bit, because there's a lot of people say kids to take risk. But the thing is, you are risking a concussion every day. You get in your car, you could be hit, whatever, right? Those are accidents. Those are incidents. What we're talking about is lifestyles, where we are putting our children or ourselves in a lifestyle that we don't even know is damaging our brain and continuing or contributing to our mental degradation.
It's really something. Now, I wanted to bring up a point that you started off with right at the very beginning of our conversation, and that is about this brain, I'll call it a brain trust at Boston University, or is it at the VA hospital? Tell us how you found out about it, and that it's, from what, again, I recall in our conversation, it is the largest brain, what I want to say, a
Brain
repository
bank. Brain bank or brain
the brain
repository.
bank, that
Yep.
it is the largest one in the world.
Yes, ma'am.
That is, that's amazing. I don't think anybody knows that.
Well, I mean, it's kind of crazy. I've been there, and it's actually housed in the VA hospital in Boston. It's run by Boston University and the amazing Dr. Ann McKee, the leading CTE researcher and specialist in the world. Her and Dr. Dan work very closely together in a wide variety of studies. We found out about it when I contacted that site that said stop CTE and begged for help. And the mom, Karen Zengel, who called me back, is one of the leading activists to get parents to understand what happened to her son, Patrick, who took his life at 32. And she heard my story. She said, "Oh my God, Bruce, your son's brain never had a rest." I go, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "Your son was very hurt." And I said, "What do I do?" And she goes, "You need to talk to the Concussion Legacy Foundation to see if you can get him to the Boston University Brain Bank." I'm like, "What's a brain bank?" It turns out that Boston University is one of several brain banks in the United States. But when it comes to sports brains, they have well over 1,000 brains there from all the different contact sports that we talked about that are analyzed, they're evaluated, and they're stored there, and they're used to support research, much like the research that we paid Boston University to take a look at a couple of years ago.
This information, I think, is very important, and I'm going to make sure that our viewers will have a chance to see that information after we finish our conversation. With what you're doing right now, you have your foundation and your website. There is so much good information on your website that people can find out about, and the associations that you have come to know. All of this is so vitally important, Bruce. This obviously, the tragedy of your son's death has emerged into something that is so very positive that I think that he probably would just keep saying, "Go for it, Dad. This really needs to be known. We need to be able to do whatever we can." This has affected your life where it's your total focus right now, isn't it?
Well, unfortunately, it's not, because I own a data analytics company, which I was just talking to Dan about. We have an amazing patent that does a lot with data, but it is going to be my God mission. This is what I was, depending on how you look at the world, I think I subliminally knew I was going to lose my son. I just didn't know it, but I spent so much time with him, man. I took him everywhere. Like I said, we've been around the world. We laughed so much. And I think I knew somehow deep inside that I was going to lose him. And I cannot let this boy down until I see him again. This is all I want to do. And to your point, with the summit and the podcast, Broken Brains, the book, I mean, people don't know the book's for free. You can go to our website and download that book. We just rewrote it. It's about 50% bigger, representing all the new knowledge in the last 5 years that's available. You can go right to that website, download the book. If you want to buy it off Amazon, that's your call. But there's a lot of parents that can't afford $16, right? So, and Amazon gets most of the money anyway. So just go download the book. But it is all we have to do. And why, Donna? Is because this is the equivalent, what's even larger than cigarettes and seat belts. This affects every child that touches a ball with their head or hits another human being. And we all know so many children that play these sports. I don't know as a percentage of children how much this impacts, but we know that most of our children play sports. And most of these kids play contact sports. Because these other sports like track and field, I mean, they play basketball and baseball, but a lot of our kids play these sports and we have no idea it's harming them. No parent wants to harm their child. If they do, I'll meet you on a street corner. But nobody should want their harm, and they don't. These parents, you talk about somebody that will take a bullet for something, a parent will die for their child. But they don't know. I didn't know. I had no idea. My son said, "Hey," he was already a wrestler, "Can I play football?" I'm like, "You want to play football?" I never pushed our son into any sports. Even though I'm kind of a manly guy, I played rugby, I was a Green Beret, Sergeant Major, all this stuff. I just wanted my son to be happy. And he wanted to play these sports. Of course I supported him, man. It was cool, all right? I actually congratulated him one night and I said, "Thank you so much." And he goes, "Why?" I said, "I'm the only football wrestling father in this school." Well, guess what? I'm also the only father of a dead kid in that school. I had no idea that those two sports, along with us snowboarding and skiing together, because I love my son. If there was snow in Breckenridge, we were in that truck. We went up there, man, and we had time. As soon as wrestling school was at, we were more head trauma. My lifestyle, or the lifestyle I allowed my son to live, killed him. And if you think I would have done anything to impact that child in a negative manner, I'll eat a bullet right now. There is no way I would have harmed that child willingly, knowingly. And that is why I am so pissed off, because the research community has known about this. You ask any neurologist, do their kids play contact sports? They look at like, "Yeah, crazy." Hell no, my kid ain't playing contact sports. Well, why don't I know that? Why don't parents know that? Why isn't this information put out there by our government who funds this research? Our CDC, the NIH, all those people up there know that this is an issue. Yet 90+% of our parents have no clue when they put that, they encourage this. "I want you to be like Patrick Mahomes," or "I want you to be on the NHL. I want you to do all this great stuff with your life and make lots of money." Who doesn't want that for their child? But at what cost? And that is the issue. We have caused the largest preventable cause. This is the largest preventable cause of mental illness in this country. And it is happening in due ignorance every day. And on the other side, there's so much money. There's so much power. We got professional sports. We got, drink makers showing kids in helmets. We got the helmet and apparel people loving this whole downflow of kid ages, kids playing contact sports at lower and lower ages. It's great. It expands the base. It makes money. But we are burying our children. And it's preventable. Why can't we just get focused on making these sports safer? And they can be. There is absolutely, we've got an entire piece of legislation in front of Congress right now, trying to find somebody to pick it up that has the entire solution all built out. We can eradicate CTE simply by saying, my kid's not playing contact sports till high school. And in high school, we're going to take the contact out of practice. Who cares about winning? Guess what? Your child's probably not playing in the NHL, NFL, or he's not going to make enough money as a wrestler. He'll get through college. Great. Got it for you. All right. We do those two things, then our children live. Our children survive. Our children become successful, and our children have great lives. We keep going to where we're going right now, and we've got suffering children. And who the hell wants that?
I concur. Bruce, I know we're just about out of time, and I would like for you to give out your website, and I'm going to have your information posted as well. But I'd like for you to give out your website and the information that people can contact you through, your blog, et cetera. Would you share that with my audience?
Absolutely. And we appreciate everybody's attention to this matter. Our website is www.mpfact.org, mpfact.org. We have an amazing podcast called Broken Brains with Bruce Parkman. You can find it on any major channel out there. We're one of the most rapid growing brain podcasts out there. We have a summit if you want to just come attend and listen to people like Dr. Dan talk about this. The third International Summit on Repetitive Brain Trauma will be held at the Center for Advanced Medical Learning and Simulation in Tampa on September 16th and 17th of this year. And then we have an app on the Google and Apple stores called Head Smart. It's the only app out there for parents that has information on repetitive head impacts there. Please download it. We welcome your comments. We welcome, anything that you might want to help us expand awareness. I fly anywhere and speak on this, but that's where we can find. We're on social media, Instagram. I'm on X as at Bruce Mac Parkman, and that's my handle on X, and I post quite a bit there, and I'm on LinkedIn as well.
Bruce, I want to thank you, and I also want to thank Dr. Dan. I know that he wasn't able to spend a lot of time with us because he's a doctor. I mean, he also manages 361 people at Harvard University, so he's hard to get to go. Yeah, so we were lucky to get him for the little bit that we did. So I appreciate both of you, and I'm just so grateful. And for those of you that are listening to the program, I would like for you to be aware that the audio of this interview and conversation is going to be aired on one of my daily shows, the Donna Sebo radio show, and then we will have this video available to you in a very short period that you can access 24/7. It'll be up on YouTube as well as on my website, and I know that we're going to have it in other places as well. I'm so glad that you've joined me, and remember, when we have these conversations with people like Bruce, Dr. Dan, and anyone else, it's to make you aware that we have options we can work with. This is not a closed door kind of an environment. This is an open door for information, education, and for the betterment of life overall. I'm so glad you've joined me. Thank you so much, and we'll get together again. See you soon. Bye for now.
You have been listening to the Donna Sebo Show Special Editions. The audio version of this program will also be heard on the Donna Sebo Show radio broadcast. We are delighted you were able to join us and invite you to share this programming with your friends and family. Have a rich and fulfilling life.